Okay, so today we're going to jump right into multiplying radical expressions. So basically when we multiply, we're going to do two things. We're going to distribute and then simplify and combine like terms. And when you're multiplying radicals, there are some rules you should know. So anything that is already underneath a radical, you can multiply together. As long as the index is the same, you can multiply things together. So for example, the square root of 8 and the square root of 3. We can multiply that 8 and 3 together, and it would be the square root of 24. So anything under the radical, you can multiply together with something else under the radical. Just like over here, right? We had a square root of x, square root of y. So you can multiply those together and it would be the square root of xy. But if it's not under the radical, you can't multiply something that's outside the radical with something inside the radical. So 8 times the square root of 3, we wouldn't say 24 or the square root of 24. That would just be 8 square roots of 3. The 8 is outside the radical, the 3 is under the radical, so we can't multiply those together. If it's under the radical, you can only multiply it with something else that's under the radical. And if it's outside the radical, you can only multiply it with something else that's outside the radical. So here, A and B are outside the radical, and you can multiply those two things together. All right? But you can only multiply together things that are outside the radical with each other or things that are inside the radical with each other as long as the index is the same. So that's important to know as we go into this. So here's our first example. It says multiply and simplify. This is the square root of 3 times quantity x minus the square root of 5. So I see those parentheses and like alarm bells should be going off in my head. Distribute, 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 right? That's the first thing we do. So I need to distribute this square root of 3 through to both terms. Okay, so first I have the square root of 3 times x. All right, and we see that when we distribute through here, which just is going to give me x square roots of 3, right? This x is not under a root, so I can't multiply it by the 3 and stick it underneath the square root, so it just has to go on the outside. So I have x square roots of 3, and now I need to distribute through the square root of 3 times negative square roots of 5. Now you'll notice both the 3 and the 5 are underneath the radical, so I can multiply those together. So I have the square root of 3 times the square root of 5, which means I can multiply the 3 times the 5 underneath the radical. So my first term is of course going to stay the same. That is as simplified as it can get. But this term I can simplify further. I can multiply 3 times 5 because they're both underneath the radical, which then gives me, the x square roots of 3. So of course this term stayed the same, right? That was as simplified as it was going to get. Minus the square root of 15, okay? Because 3 times 5 is 15. And you should always be asking yourself, can I simplify that any further? Can we simplify the square root of 15 any further than that? And no, we can't. So that is my answer. X square roots of 3 minus the square root of 15. And that's as simplified as it will get. Let's look at another example. Okay, here's our example number 2. Again, multiply and simplify. Here we have two quantities being multiplied together. 4 plus the square root of 3 times 7 minus 2 times the square roots of 3. And of course I need to FOIL, right? When we have two quantities being multiplied together like this, we can FOIL them together, all right, to multiply. So of course FOIL stands for, the F stands for firsts. Here our first terms are 4 times 7, which gives us 28, pretty easy. Next we go to the O, which are our outers. So 4 and negative 2 square roots of 3. So we have 4 times negative 2 square roots of 3. The 4 is not underneath the radical, so we're just going to multiply it together with that negative 2, which gives us negative 8, and our square roots of 3 stays the same. So 4 times negative square roots of 3 is negative 8 square roots of 3. Okay, now we go to the I, which is our inners, okay, and that's our square root of 3 times 7. 7 is not underneath the radical, so we can't multiply it by the 3. It's just going to hang on the outside. So we have 7 square roots of 3. And then, of course, our lasts, which gives us the square root of 3 times negative 2 square roots of 3. This one gets a little bit more complicated, but it's not that bad, okay? So we have the square root of 3 times negative 2 square roots of 3. We know we can only multiply things that are underneath radicals with things that are underneath radicals if the index is the same, and here it is. So here the -2, we can multiply it with nothing. There's nothing else on the outside of the radical, so that just leaves us with the -2. But then we have the square root of 3 times the square root of 3, which, as we know, we can multiply these 3's together if they're both underneath the radical of the same index. So that 3 times 3 is 9. So that -2, of course, stayed. So we have -2 times the square root of 9. Well, what's the square root of 9, guys? It's 3. That leaves us with -2 times 3, which is -6. So those two terms multiplied together actually simplified down to just a number, which is pretty cool. All right. Okay, and so then we need to put all this together. So we have 28 from our first term, okay, minus 8 square roots of 3, which came from our next term, plus 7 square roots of 3, which came from our next term, minus 6, okay, which came from our last. All right, now we're just going to combine like terms. Well, I can combine these two, 28 minus 6. That's just going to give us a number, right? 28 minus 6 is 22. And I can also combine the -8 square roots of 3 and the 7 square roots of 3, right? Same index, same radicand. The index is 2, the radicand is 3. So 7 square roots of 3 minus 8 square roots of 3 leaves us with -1 square roots of 3. So I'm just going to write it like this, which gives us our answer, 22 minus the square root of 3. All right, so that's how that simplifies. So it was a bit more complicated, but not too bad. It just involved a little bit more multiplication and simplification. But if you work through it step by step, you can certainly do it. There's one more example I want to show you. So here's a few examples for you guys to try. If you need to, make sure you go back into the video as you do these problems and pause it as you need to and work through each step as I do. The last one, the third example here that you see, if you're struggling with it, check out the next video. If you think you've got it, go for it. You're multiplying the radicands together and then simplifying, so you're sort of throwing back to what we did last week when we simplified these big radicands, I should say. So if you struggle with the third one, watch the next video. If you think you've got the third one, then great. All right, so good luck. Reach out with any questions, post in the forum, or shoot me a message, and I'll get back to you. Good luck. Have fun. I know you got this. Bye.